We're pretty much a pure real estate developer. We develop from the ground up. We don't usually buy existing assets or reposition assets. We take a project from finding the site to completion to operation. And I think we focus on inner city neighborhoods, underserved markets that in the past have been ignored by retailers. And we try to develop an exciting project and having a reason for the retailers to come to a neighborhood. Well, first, we're looking for income density, not necessarily income, because many neighborhoods and markets we look at, the incomes are not normally what a retailer would see. But if you have enough people, the overall market income can be substantial. And that appeals to certain retailers it doesn't appeal to. And we also look for areas that are located where there's either high pedestrian counts or access to mass transit. Many of the customers in these markets don't have cars, or it's too complicated to drive around a city, and they don't want to take a cab or Uber. So we want to have something that's within walking distance or easily accessible to mass transit. We also look for large sites because the economics of what we're looking for destination projects. We're not looking for infill projects. So we look for bigger scale sites, which are sometimes difficult to find in a city for a number of reasons. And so that's kind of what we look for. The thing a lot of times with large projects, large sites in cities, they usually have some problem, or they would have been developed already. A lot of times they're ex-manufacturing sites that may have contamination, or they may be zoned for manufacturing and not for retail, or they may be have some type of tangled ownership structure, or they may be owned by the city who's trying to do something with it. So all these things makes somewhat difficult to get sites. The way we find sites is just legwork, knowing the markets, knowing the sites, knowing what potentially could be in play, knowing how a market is trending, how it's developing, looking ahead to see where infrastructure improvements are going to be done by a city. A project we did in Washington, D.C. came about, economic development in the area, a large part because the city put a subway station at the corner of our site. That really spurred economic development in that area. That project is in the Columbia Heights section of Washington, and it was in the 60s. It was a vibrant shopping strip area, and with the race riots in the late 60s, some fires, and it got burned down, and it kind of lay dormant for 30 years. The city came along and wanted to redevelop it. They went through many iterations over the years trying to get it redeveloped. Nothing really worked. We came along as part of a RFP process, and were selected for the large. There was our parcel and some other parcels which were predominantly retail. Our parcel, which is about a 5-acre site, we proposed to do a retail project, which consists of about 500,000 square feet of retail, 2 levels below grade parking with about 1,000 parking spaces, anchored by a Target, with a Best Buy, Bed Bath & Beyond, Marshalls, the types of tenants that weren't in this area. This is a predominantly residential area, and this is a site that is fairly unique to Washington because there's not a lot of big parcels in dense areas of Washington, D.C. So we saw it as an opportunity to develop something that would be very successful, that would meet what the city was looking for in terms of economic development, and also meet what the community was looking for. The challenge there was getting retailers to buy into the concept, because when you see an area that essentially has no buildings around it, not only our site but other sites, to get them to buy into doing a large retail project in this area was a challenge. And retailers needed to have vision to see, once this project was built, what would happen to this neighborhood. And the project actually won an Urban Land Institute International Award for the redevelopment of the Columbia Heights area. It's one of 10 projects selected in the Americas. So it was a very successful project in a number of different ways, both financially, but also in terms of economic development and the ancillary development that occurred because of that. Harlem, USA was done at a time when Harlem was not what Harlem is today. Harlem today is the home of multi-million-dollar brownstones, multiple Starbucks, Whole Foods. It's a different place today than it was then. We have been looking at that site for a long time. We knew that that was a seriously under-retailed market. You had 500,000 people in Upper Manhattan that did not have a movie theater, for example. And they didn't have very few eating options. They had very few banks. So we knew that there was a market there. We also knew we wanted to design a project that was kind of a statement, not simply just a retail project. And there was a certain amount of cynicism in Harlem at the time, because a lot of people proposed to do projects and nothing really worked out. So we wanted to design an attractive-looking building. So we hired Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, world-famous architect, to design kind of a glass box that that would stick out as a beacon in the area. And a lot of people in those days, they still had the fortress mentality of retail, that the windows, you know, put down the gates at night. You don't put glass in because people will break it. But we wanted to get away from that perception and build something that, you know, would spur economic development in the community, provide jobs, and provide retailers with a space that they would want to go to. We have in that space it's about 270,000 square feet of retail, with a movie theater, Magic Johnson Theaters, health club, retail, and some restaurant uses. It was a very transformative project in Harlem, and in fact, Crain's Magazine called it one of the 10 most important projects in New York in the past 25 years, because what it did to the community. 125 Live is a smaller project right next to the world-famous Apollo Theater. That's kind of an infill project, but that is meant to strengthen the street. In that case, we provided a restaurant. There weren't many restaurants at the time. A Red Lobster restaurant that we put in, and our relationship with the Apollo is such that has been very successful, both for us and the fact that they benefit from it too. Baychester Square is about a 500,000 square foot project of retail, and we actually have a little bit of senior housing on the site, and it's meant to be more of a lifestyle center. The area of the Bronx that it's in is Baychester area by Co-op City, if anyone's familiar with that area. It's at the intersection of Interstate 95 and the Hutchinson Parkway. So it's a very prime site. We were selected an RFP with the city, which was disposing this 10-acre site. And there's already existing retail across the highway, Baychester Mall, and that is has been there for 20 years and has been very successful. So, but it's a mall. We're trying to do something different. The closest lifestyle center to New York is in Westchester County. There's really nothing like this. Lifestyle meaning stores open to the outdoors, outdoor plaza areas, seating areas, places where people can congregate, people can hang out. It's a different type of urban project. It's in the Bronx, but it's not. It's more of a project that you would drive to. Completely different project that we're doing is Boulevard in White Plains, which is about a 220,000 square foot upscale retail project that we're doing. And the reason we're doing upscale in White Plains is we believe that it's an underserved market of luxury and higher end retail. The project site is very close to the Scarsdale border and other wealthy communities in southern Westchester. So we're looking to attract people from there. Right now, the only upscale mall shopping experience is the Westchester Mall. And again, this will be an outdoor, more pedestrian-oriented retail with some fitness concepts that we hope to attract people to come to more than once a week. A lot of times the problems that we have with mixed use is the parking requirements for residential in certain areas make it difficult to match with parking requirements for retail. Certain projects, yes, in Manhattan, where you don't have parking requirements in certain zoning districts, you can do that. In this case, this was part of the agreement with the city. The city wanted, in the community wanted some senior housing. The city's pushing for more affordable housing. So this was a way to both satisfy the city's requirement and the community's requirement. And it becomes the project itself becomes an attractive amenity to the 180 units there because they can walk through it. Seniors can, hang out in the common areas and have more of a pedestrian experience than they would in other areas. In the short term, I think they're impacting it by tenants are still trying to figure out their strategy. Some tenants already have an online presence, and they are they're more advanced than other ones. There's certain tenants who today have been bricks and mortars but may have an online presence, but are looking for more, I'm trying to think of the right word here. So more of an experience, where you go to a store and you may have a cooking demonstration, or you may have a cafe, or you may have some other aspect that keeps you in the store. The other thing that retailers are trying to struggle with is how much of their space should be converted to more showroom space where you come and look at something and order it online. The challenge with that is for a developer is the project may generate sales, but the retailer, are they online sales or store sales? And that's a tug of war that's going on now between developers and retailers, trying to figure out how to, and percentage rent deals about how to make that equitable. The other thing that you see, one thing you do see with certain tenants is the downsizing of the requirements. You have a tenant that maybe was looking at 30,000 square feet, and now they're looking 10 or 15. The other thing that you are seeing, though, is some of the bigger tenants, the Targets and the Walmarts of the world, are looking to downsize for urban sites because they still want a physical presence. They don't want the big footprint, but they still want to be able to reach the customer, both for online and in-store. And you've seen that also with things like Amazon. They're opening physical stores, and other people will be replicating that. Now, we don't know how that's all going to shake out, and Amazon is just starting this process. But I think the fact that Amazon thinks they do need a physical presence is important, and I think that other retailers will follow suit and maybe have smaller stores, but will still have a physical presence. So I think the online sales will continue to grow. I've heard it's 8% now of retail sales. It's projected to go up to, I read recently, up to 30%. But it still leaves a large amount of sales that are going to be done in stores. And you're still going to need physical footprint. You're still going to need physical space. But you may not need as many stores, and they need to be in the right location. I think that the restaurants, they've been a driver of a lot of retail projects. There's still a question of some of the market forces, such as market and regulatory forces, such as minimum wage increases, impacts of Obamacare, other labor law changes that are going to affect their expansion plans. And I think they're still trying to figure out how that is going to, how all that's going to shake out. But I think that that's an area that will continue to grow. Entertainment, those entertainment concepts come and go. Some of them work, some of them don't. And I think that's still something that's being figured out. I think there's still going to be entertainment concepts, ideas, and the way technology is going with virtual reality. Who knows what the next interesting concept's going to be. I think with real estate, it's a field where you really need to know all the different areas. You don't have to be an expert in them, but you have to be able to be knowledgeable. You need to know a little bit about construction. You need to know about architecture. You need to know a little bit about law. You need to know leasing. Besides financing, which obviously you would need to know. You need to know market research. So you need to know a little bit about each area, but you really need to be very good in one of the areas. And I think that is what, in the development field, they're typically smaller operations. You don't need many people to develop a building. So you really need expertise to bring to the table on day one to contribute. But you still need those other areas to know about, because there's nothing in real estate that it's not a singular knowledge. Everything affects something else. What you do in leasing affects construction, affects financing. Changes in law, changes in environmental law affects all these things. So you really have to be aware of all facets of this to be successful.